Hi, my name is Gavin Henning, Professor of Higher Education at New England College, and also President for the Council for the Advancement of Standards in Higher Education. In this mini lecture, I want to give you an overview of the CAS standards and guidelines. So when people talk about the CAS standards, you kind of know what they're talking about. You know the ins and outs, the similarities and differences. First, when we talk about the CAS standards, we're typically talking about the functional area sets of standards. There's not one standard for functional areas, but rather there are a set of standards for each functional area. We have 45 of those right now. We have 2 that are just being developed. One is on case management and one is on sustainability. We also have cross-functional frameworks, which I'll talk a little bit about in the end to give you some more details about that. One is on first-year experience programs, which will be publishing soon, and the other is on building healthy campuses. So how do you actually reduce high-risk behaviors on campus? And we also have one in development on behavioral intervention teams, and so we'll be working on that over the next 12 to 18 months. Also important to know when we talk about sets of standards, there are different elements of each. And so there's a content focus, and there are both general standards and then specialty standards. And the general standards are the standards that go through every single functional area set of standards. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. And the specialty standards are those that are very specific to that functional area. And in addition to that content focus, there's a quality focus. Now the standards are really what are the threshold, the minimum, the basics that any program or department should have. And the guidelines are something like, if you want to do a little bit more, if you want to step it up a notch, these are some things you should actually take a look at. There are 12 sections of the general standards. You can see those here. And these are the same sections that go through every single set of functional area standards. And then within each of these, there'll be some elements of each, let's say for example, mission, which are the same in every single functional area standard, and some that are different. And so, as I mentioned, general standards are common across all functional areas. They appear verbatim in every single set of functional area standards. We call this boilerplate because they're the exact same thing for every functional area standards. So an example might be, programs and services must develop, disseminate, implement, and regularly review their mission. So it doesn't matter what functional area you're in, this is something that your department should be doing. Now, specialty standards are special just to that functional area, very specific to that. And so for an example of that in career development related to mission, the primary mission of career services is to assist students and other designated clients through all phases of their career development. So you can see the item on the left, the standard on the left, goes through every single functional area standard. The one on the right is very specific to career services. Here's a little bit more explanation of the difference between standards and guidelines. So the standards, they're indispensable. Every department program should do that. They should be able to achieve them regardless of quality. So small institution like mine should be able to reach them, as well as large, highly resourced institutions. These appear in bold type, and we use words such as must and shall. Now the guidelines really, they clarify, they amplify standards, give a little bit more extension to them. They really are to enhance practice beyond that essential function. They appear in light face type, and we use the verbs should and may. So that's where you can really kind of tell the difference between the two of them. Our self-assessment guides are the tools used in the self-study process to really evaluate each of those standards. Now, we made some revisions a couple of years ago, so if you've worked with the SAGs in the past, but not in the last 3 years, you'll notice some differences. The first difference is first of all, we separate out the self-assessment guide by the same sections as we do in the general standards. So here's an example from Part 5, Ethics. And so there are going to be 12 sections in each self-assessment guide. That's going to be specific to each functional area set of standards. We provide some evidence at the top of the section about what kind of evidence you might want to gather to do the evaluation. The criterion measures are what do you want to evaluate? What's the rating scale? And then in the past, where there would be a rating scale for every single standard, and typically at a set of standards about 200 to 255 individual standards, we've now clumped them together to make the process a little bit easier. So we created clusters of criterion measures so that they're actually fewer to rate, and they also make sense to put them together. We've also added this section on the narrative So you can actually explain why that you or that the committee gave the rating that they did. Now I want to talk a little bit about the functional area process as well. And so we've had a request from a lot of small offices, a lot of them similar to my institution, where they're one-person offices, but they're responsible for multiple sets of standards, multiple sets of areas. So a student activities office that could be responsible for student activities, leadership programs, fraternity and sorority programs, campus unions, etc. And so we have to think through, how can we help those departments do that work? And we want to provide some options to doing that. So we worked with a colleague of ours who had been doing this on her campus, and she suggested a number of ways that can be approached. First is the least rigorous way, which you just use the general standards. There's no specialty standards. You just use the general standards because those are going to be the same across all functional areas. And when you do the general standard approach, you'd be looking across all those areas and making some ratings. The a la carte approach would be taking standards from different areas, from different functional areas, and putting those all together. The individual standard approach would really be just kind of rotating out. So you might have to oversee 5 sets of standards. Each year you'd focus on a different set of standards, so kind of rotate them out over time. The limited comprehensive approach, you may say, I'm going to use a section of set of standards for one standard, but then use the general standards for everything else. And then the comprehensive approach really is taking all sets of standards from both functional areas and just mashing them all together. And you'd have a really long list, but it would be very comprehensive. And so we actually have a document that outlines each of these processes and how you can go through and do that. All you have to do is go to cas.edu, click on the store, and look for the multifunctional area review process. We also have cross-functional frameworks. And this came out of some requests we heard from a lot of folks saying, higher education's changed. While there's still these independent departments, a lot more work is happening across departments around specific issues. And so folks wanted a framework with some common threads, regardless of issue, similar to the general standards, that really can help them guide the work that they're doing. They wanted frameworks that looked and felt similar to the CAS functional area standards, but really provided some direction on these issues that transcend any one functional area. And they wanted additional resources to how to really address these issues. And so we began working on this, and we came up with a template. And the template has these 7 sections, which are common to every cross-functional framework. But within it, there'll be some that are going to be consistent across cross-functional issues, with some elements, that guidance, which will be specific to that functional area or to that issue. So the introduction and context provides an overview of the issue. The charge is what should the team or the group of people working on this be doing? How is that team comprised? Who participates in that? What approach and process do they use for the work to address that issue? What are the specific elements, strategies, or tactics that are research-based that can help address that issue? How is communications done across both across that team, but also externally? And then obviously having assessment and benchmarking related to that issue. So those are the common sections that are through all cross-functional frameworks. And again, you can go to the CAS store, cas.edu, and /store, and take a look at the cross-functional frameworks we have there and download those. Just a reminder that the 10th edition we'll be publishing in the spring of 2019. In addition to the 10th edition, we'll be adding a lot more resources, so pay attention to those, a lot more things to help you and your colleagues do assessment. A lot of ways to get connected with CAS. We have user groups for both 2-year college professionals and 4-year college professionals. You can either try to follow the link here, or just go to Facebook and type in CAS. They'll come up. You can also follow our CAS Facebook page, which really is just about the organization in general. We post updates here, so you know what new standards are coming out, what new resources are available. And we do the same thing on Twitter as well, so you may want to follow us on that. And then YouTube provides a lot of different resources you can check out to help you do your work. But really the main place to go is cas.edu. We've got a lot of stuff on there, a great resource center. We have a lot of other elements in our store that are helpful. Continue to use the 9th edition of the book. As I mentioned, the 10th will be coming out in the spring of 2019. And the self-assessment guides are really the key tool to using CAS. The standards in and of themselves are helpful, but the CAS guides are actually just what helps you walk through and do that self-assessment process. If you're Campus Labs member campus, you can also access the program review templates right there in Campus Labs rather than through a hard copy or an electronic copy of a Word document that you can get from us. So a lot of different ways to get connected to us, a lot of resources we provide. Please let us know if there's anything else we can do to help support the work that you're doing.